I want to share my results with some rope cut testing on 8670 carbon steel. That's what my first batch is going to be in, and let's get to it. Testing the cuts on is going to be, it's a 1/2 inch roll of manila rope, and I'm just cutting these little bits of it right here. So this is the width I'm actually cutting. The stones I've actually used to sharpen the 8670 steel with 15 degrees per side. So far it tested the best with just a 400 grit edge that was fully deburred and brought up on 1 micron diamond. I also tested the 1200 grit edge. I tested that twice, and also finished on deburred with the 1 micron diamond strop. And then I also brought up, I did a 1200 to 4K very, very polished edge. This one did the worst on the rope cut testing. Initially, this had the best cutting quality, so this was lasering through the rope for the first, I want to say 10-15 cuts before it stopped at about, I want to say 28 cuts. This is just when the edge went kaput. It was no longer able to cut printer receipt paper, and it was no longer able to shave arm hair. This edge got it about to 35 cuts. And was no longer able to shave hair or anything like that. The 400 grit edge actually lasts the longest, and that's after you've stropped with 1 micron diamond. So I'm at 50 cuts so far, and this thing is still going. So far the lower grit edges seem like they're gonna do the best here with the rope cutting test. And that's just in general. So that's kind of something to take away from rope cut testing. If you're cutting manila rope, you know, it's more of an abrasion resistance test, and so you need more teeth at your edge. The toothier your edge, the better it's going to do at a test like this. Measuring at the shoulder, it looks like we're about 17th thou behind the edge. That's just right at the shoulder of the bevel here. And 15 degrees per side, the same basically edge geometry I put on all my knives. So we learned from the testing video that I did beforehand that you can't go under 10 thousandths with this steel right now with the heat treat I have on there. There could be more to explore with the steel as far as trying different things to try to push that limit, you know, to see if we can break through that barrier. We have a barrier set for this steel. I want to go back and I want to grind this a little bit thinner. 17 thousandths is doing okay, but I want to see that bevel shrink down to much more of a hairline bevel. You can see my bevel on there right now is much wider than I would like. I would like a much smaller bevel so that my 15 degrees per side almost shows up like a micro bevel, and that would be excellent. So I'm not done with the finish grinding on this guy, but I got to see where I'm at. I got to put a bevel on there, see where my grinds are, and then I'm going to go back down and I'm going to clean everything up and get everything looking nice. And yeah, we'll do some more testing too when we actually have the knife finished. But this is kind of what I do with all my knives. I go through and I test them and I see how many cuts I get with each one. It definitely lengthens the process, you know, before I get the knife out the door, but without having all of the testing equipment I need, that's about the only way I can guarantee I'm getting a quality product out the door and into somebody's hand. And so that's kind of what you pay for. So, all right, yeah. Just kind of want to show you guys where we're at with cutting. We'll cut the printer paper here, and this is after 50 cuts in manila rope with this knife. So here we go. So you can see how well a toothy edge does. You can hear how that cuts as well. When you keep a toothy edge on there, you're still able to keep some teeth at the edge. Some people confuse a toothy edge with basically having a burr that's standing straight up, but that's different. You have to remove the burr. A completely burr-free toothy edge apex is what's going to cut the longest on manila rope and for all the rope cut testing. So that's just interesting right there. And this is after 50 cuts. It's not a perfect edge, but you can hear there the toothiness to it. It still has some teeth on there. And so we're able to still cut some manila rope here. We'll clean all this up and we'll kind of cut some more on the manila rope and see how much further we can go. What's the absolute limit? Go 8670. We've already got 50 cuts in so far. This is again with the 400 grit edge off that vitrified water stone. Completely deburred, I double checked, and then I went to the 1 micron diamond. That's going to be a really aggressive edge, and it's apparently going to give you the longest cutting on manila rope with my steel. So we'll start the cut. It's definitely not cutting as fresh as it was initially, but it's still able to make the cuts. Alright, so in that clip you saw that we did basically 15 more cuts for a grand total of 65 cuts, again with the 400 grit edge. And let's test again on printer paper, and we'll test a little bit on the receipt paper. So let's kind of see where we are on this receipt paper. And we're not going to cut all the way through, I just want to see if it bites in. And we can see it doesn't have the bite. We've got bite here. If we hold the paper rigid, no bite there. It'll still cut the paper, but it's lost a lot of that bite from its initial sharpness. But again, this is after 65 cuts in that manila rope. We'll now cut this paper. I got that a little wet, unfortunately, so we're not going to be able to cut through that section of it, but we'll come up and we'll cut through here. Still able to make cuts in paper. They're not quality cuts though. But again, this is after 65 cuts in manila rope. And 65 cuts in manila rope, 17 thousandths behind the edge, 15 per side. So the geometry matters. I'm sure when I drop the geometry to the final geometry I want to do, it's not going to be excellent at batoning through aluminum, but everything's a trade-off, you know what I mean? So we're doing a trade-off so that we get better cuts. So let's continue actually. I'm very curious to see where this ends up. And we'll get rid of this paper. We'll grab fresh paper. I'm making a big mess here. We'll have to clean all this up before the wife comes downstairs. But yeah, let's go ahead and continue cutting the manila rope. Move this stuff to the side here. This is the additional 15 cuts. 65 total so far. And let's continue. Ooh, noticing it's taking more force here. 66, 67, 80, 70. We have 80. Just want to feel where I'm at on there. So this is with moderate force. If I increase the force, we can hear it cutting, but not as much. That makes a total of 80 right there. I'm sure we can continue, but I think 80 is about where we're at with this steel and that edge on there. We'll set this out of the way. Again, let's test real quick on the receipt paper, see if we still have the bite there. And there you can see the quality of the cut. It feels very blunt. My apex feels very blunt right now. Check for any reflections of light, any blunting. So no blunting, that's good. So definitely means I got the steel nice and hard. Again, I don't have the proper testing equipment to give you guys those kinds of numbers right now because I completely lack the tools and equipment and money right now to get that stuff for you. But rest assured, when we get to that point, whether it's through selling knives or figuring out some way of getting the tools I need, we'll be able to get you guys a lot of really cool information about knives and steel. Let's just say it will not shave. So what are we at, 80 cuts so far? And let's just kind of continue here. One, two, three. I'm going to say about 80 cuts, to be honest, because I'm adding so much force to these cuts. I could probably keep doing, this for a long time because I can just keep adding more and more force to it. But really, with the rope cut testing, what people do is they actually do this rope cut testing on a scale. They get like an analog scale so that they could see exactly when how much force they're using goes up to about 20 pounds. And if they're putting downward pressure of about 20 pounds, then that's when they know the kind of cut testing is over. That way they're not just cutting forever and ever and ever, because the stronger and stronger you are, the more you can cut rope by just increasing the levels of force. And also, if you have a thin amount of geometry behind the edge, that means less force is needed to cut. So you're not necessarily even testing steel at a certain point. You're kind of testing geometry and your sharpening skill and how strong you are. So you have to get rid of those variables if you're doing a rope cut test. So we'll say I made it to about 80 cuts. Let's be modest. That's fairly impressive for this material, 8670. I would say that I noticed a drop in the insane amounts of cutting aggression at about 30 cuts. And I would say that with 400 grit, you could probably get to about 50 cuts. With the 1200 grit, we'll say you can get to about 30, and with 4000 grit edge, you can get to about 20 cuts on manila rope about this size again. Oh, God, what size is that? It looks like it's about like, what is that, 1/4 inch? Yeah, this is about 1/4 inch of manila rope right here. So 1/4 inch manila rope, that's kind of some fun facts for you guys. You know, all this stuff is relative. It depends on how well you could sharpen. It depends on how well this or that. There's no exact number that you're going to get every single time when it comes to cutting the rope. So yeah, this is just a rough grind on here. We're going to go ahead and we're going to clean this guy up. I'm going to put a better grind on this guy, get everything nice and cleaned out, drop down to about, I don't know, let's say the limit of maybe 12 thou, 13 thousandths, because I'm not trying to make an incredibly super duper durable knife. I want to make a good quality cutting knife. But we know that the limit for 8670 now is that you can't drop below 10 thousandths. 20 thousandths will be super durable, so it just depends on what somebody's looking for a knife. I'm not going to make a super survival knife right now at this moment in time. Like I said, I want to make a sporting knife, something that's a good kind of sportsman's companion for, you know, using it for some dressing of game and stuff like that. Just a good, sharp overall knife, just like what the mountain men used, you know, a big old blade. So that's kind of my plan with this knife again. That's the theme of it. In the future, we will be making some survival type knives because I feel like that's pretty easy to do, to be honest. You know, you just kind of tweak the geometry a little bit. But we'll get to it. We'll focus on making the laser beam first, and then we'll focus on making the sledgehammer. Alright guys, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching my channel. Take care.